All right, hello. Today, instead of our usual sort of looking at a song and learning it, we're going to be working on more general music theory. Yay! Which, in contrast to just learning a song individually, we're more working on the sort of how to understand music as a whole. And so we're just going to start off with some simple stuff today. All right, so the first thing we're going to start off with is sort of how do each individual notes or all of the individual notes that you see on a piece of sheet music relate to each other? What is the different shape of them mean? How are they related? What's connecting them all together? So we're going to start looking at probably the one you're most used to seeing. This is our quarter note. Our quarter note generally represents one beat in a measure. And it's generally going to be, especially when we're starting out in the beginning, the most common thing that you'll see. All right, so continuing from the quarter note, we now have our half note. Now, if you remember, we said the quarter note is worth 1, so that makes the half note worth 2 beats. So 1 half note gives you 2 quarter notes, which both equal 1. And finally, we get to the biggest note you're generally going to see, which is our whole note. Now, if we remember, we get our quarter note, which gives us 1. Then we have a half note, which is 2. A whole note is made up of 2 half notes. So a whole note is 4 beats. And our half note is 2, and each of these equals 1. So you'll see, if you were to have a measure that's set up like this, and you use the normal count of 1, 2, 3, 4 for each measure, whenever you have 4 quarter notes, it will take up the same amount of space as 2 half notes, which will take up the same amount of space as 1 whole note. Now, the difference between each of these is, I'm sure you can probably figure out, is that we're not, when we're playing piano at least, pressing a key every beat for each one of these. So, for an example, for our whole note that we have here, our nice little misshapen whole note that we are not pressing the piano key individually every time of 1, 2, 3, 4. Instead, we are pressing it our 1 time, and then we're holding it until the end of the measure. Whereas if we had something like our half notes here, we would press and then we would hold, but then we would press again and hold. And finally, if we have our quarter notes, we are going to press every time. We are going to press on 1, press on 2, press on 3, and press on 4. So these are how our bigger notes relate. But what about notes that are smaller than 1 beat? Well, music takes care of that too. So if we remember, our quarter note is worth 1 beat. However, we can split that up further, and we get an eighth note. Which is worth half a beat. Now, individually, by themselves, 1/8 note looks like this. However, when they're combined together, they look like this with the little bar in between them. And so 1/8 note, or 1 quarter note, is equal to 2/8 notes, which means 1/8 note is equal to half of a beat. But what if we need to get even smaller? So if we start with our quarter note, which equals 1 beat, then we split it up into our eighth note, which gives you half of a beat. And we need to go smaller. We then split up our eighth notes into 16th notes. Now, you'll notice the difference when you have one eighth note versus 1 16th note is they get a little extra tail. Now, whenever you put 16th notes together, it's going to do something very similar to the eighth note, except just like how it gets an extra tail by itself, you get an extra bar over here. And so we have 1 quarter note, which is equal to 1 beat, to 1 eighth note, which is equal to 1/2 of a beat. And then we get to a 16th note, which is equal to 1/4 of a beat. Now, if we wanted to take a look at that on a music staff, we've already established that a quarter note, when we're working off of the normal measure of 1, 2, 3, 4, represented by this, which you will see on just about any piece of music. The numbers might be different, but this will be the most common one you see. When we are counting by the normal 1, 2, 3, 4 count, you will see your 4 quarter notes taking up the space of one measure, because we know each quarter note is equal to 1 beat. But what if we wanted to look at this in eighth notes? It would look like this. Now, if we'll count, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Eighth notes, 8 notes. And you'll see it still fits into our 1, 2, 3, 4 counting. Now, I drew it with the bars connecting them because this is the most common way you will see eighth notes, with the bar. However, if you have a bunch of eighth notes in a row, you're not going to see the bar split up like this unless there's something in their way. So let's just say there's something in the way of these. But these are next to each other and these are next to each other. What you will do in this situation is connect the bars, because these are all eighth notes. And it will be the same for 16th notes, and just as however far down you need to go, if they are next to each other and they are not interrupted, they will connect bars. Now, I'm sure you might have noticed whenever you were watching this video that when I was demonstrating the notes as is, I was writing them with their little lines sticking up. However, when I've been drawing them on the staff, I've been drawing them with lines down. And the reason for that is whenever you're reading music, if a note is higher than this middle line, which in our treble clef, which is told by this symbol, is B, and in bass clef, which is told by this symbol, is D. Now, if a note is under this middle line, its stem, which is what these are called, goes down. But if it is above this line, its stem goes up. And this is going to be the case for pretty much any piece of music. Now, you get something really weird here when you see that, is sometimes you'll see notes here. Just suppose these were eighth notes and there was nothing in between them. How would you connect these? Well, you'd have something that looks a little bit like this. And the reason that this stem is down is because our lowest note is below the line. Now, if our lowest note was above this line, our stem would be pointing up. And that will be all the time that we have for today. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this has taught you just a little bit about what it is to start getting into reading sheet music and learning. I hope to see you in class.